and a leader, for example, Yusha bin Nun, fighting against who? Hazrat Musa's wife. So this way, situations, as I say, may seem different, but actually the essence is the same. So therefore, what Islam gives is principles to be able to combat those decisions, those difficult moments, to make the right decision. And hence, to understand human nature becomes important. Allah created Adam. After creating Adam, three things come apparent. The purpose of creating Adam was what? In essence, Adam became the test. And in every generation and in every era, the test is always Waliullah. You'll notice this. In the time of the Prophet, the test was Amir al-Mu'mineen. And the Walayat of Ali has always been the test until today. Always been there. And we discussed this earlier on, most of you were there earlier on, so I'm not going to go into that. Here, the biggest downfall for Shaitan was what? Shaitan was arrogant. So the first destruction, you could say, of the taqaddus of creation comes after the great wipeout, or the great reset that Allah put in place, was what? Because remember, there was a great reset. There were two species before this creation, the jinn and the nasnas. The nasnas were similar to human beings, but they weren't human beings. When they committed a sin, Allah wiped him out. Now when I say a sin, there's certain sins that a person commits that brings adab down. Certain sins bring sudden death. Certain sins decrease your wealth. Certain sins remove the nur from your face. And all of these things you find. Every sin has a reaction, but there's certain things that bring pandemic, and certain things wipe out. There must have been some very, very bad sin that was committed collectively for Allah to send an azab. And this azab came and wiped out an entire nation, you could say, of people, of the nasnas. As far as the jinns were concerned, the jinns were then banished from the physical world into a kind of a malakuti world. So though they reside on this world, but they're physically not seen walking the world. It was only in the time of Sulaiman, when you had the jinns and you had the shayateen, which is a branch of the jinns, you could say, that came forward, and they were walking on earth because of Sulaiman. But even before that and even after that, you don't find this. So you don't find them walking. They don't interfere. As long as you don't interfere with them, they're not going to interfere with you, for argument's sake, in that respect. So you see that there's a division. As far as shaitan is concerned though, no, shaitan does interfere. That when Allah decided to banish shaitan, shaitan says, I'm going to aghwa your people, basically. That's what the Quran says. Because you did aghwa on me. So at that moment, what happened? Shaitan was given access. Allah gave shaitan access. He says, if you want the access, I'll give you the access. He gave the access to human beings, their physical body. So when you get sick sometimes, it's actually min amal al-shaitan. And when you get sick, immediately people, when they're taken out of the equilibrium, many times people are, you will see, they become rude, they become disrespectful, all sorts of things happen. Here basically, it's a test from Allah. Allah's testing you. This test, and remember, Allah doesn't wish bad on anyone. So what happens? Allah is khair. So wherever you find su is where shaitan is. Shaitan can provoke your body to get to a state whereby the test is there. And if you see with the prophets what happened, if you look at it, there was a prophet, Sabr, Ayyub is famous. Ayyub was a prophet, was physically inflicted. And then shaitan came to test him. And he passed the test. The second place that shaitan hits is your nafs. So what shaitan, because you've got to understand how shaitan hits you. So he hits your nafs. And all of those qualities or those traits inside of you, I say the vices inside of you, come out. So for example, if you're put in a situation, it's possible you may get angry, you may shout, you may scream. All of these things are why. The fundamental reason is because shaitan hits your nafs. So you've got to be aware. The reason why we have time, they say in spirituality, is it allows you for a moment to stop and freeze at a time where shaitan's hitting you. The third place shaitan hits is your psyche. Sometimes people get depressed. Sometimes, I say, it's because of an attack of shaitan. And this is where dhikr of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad becomes important. Right? Ali Muhammad's dhikr all of a sudden gives you this energy to move forward. If you see anybody who's drenched in the wilayat of Ahlul Bayt, you'll see they move forward. But even in difficult moments, because they know that their warith is Ali ibn Abi Talib, they know there's Imam Zaman there who's over their heads. So in essence, you find that there's three ways that shaitan hits. Develop it forward now. Here shaitan has access to Adam. Here what happens with shaitan. Physical world comes along when shaitan basically helps to remove Adam out. Here the tradition says that there was a hirs Adam had. There was a greed. It wasn't haram, by the way. There's a tree of knowledge. Adam wanted knowledge. It's not a bad thing to want knowledge. And in essence, he was misguided, right? He'd never seen anyone swear to Allah in the way that Muslim bin Aqil, when they swore to Allah and they betrayed him, he said, هَذَا مِنْ أَوَّلِ الْغَدَرِ. This is like the first ghadr that's ever happened, treacherous as has happened. Here shaitan is treacherous because shaitan's job is being whispering in your ear and being treacherous. So what happens? Adam eats and Adam's shown his nakedness. Basically, what is it? Adam shown comes into the physical world, he's shown the reality. When Adam comes into the physical world, here you find the hadith says that the hirs of Adam, so the first you could say is takabbur and the other one is greed. The third then happens is when the instant of Habil and Qabil takes place. You find the first ever murder on earth, the first ever sin on earth is between two brothers. The brother inside had jealousy. And these are those three things that destroys human beings. If a person has arrogance, it's possible that on a deathbed they may die the death of a kafir. And they have greed, it's the same thing. And if they have jealousy, it's the same thing. Jealousy destroys a person. Destroys your deeds completely. And the hadith says on your deathbed you'll die the death of a kafir. Have I ever told you the story about Ayatollah al-Paygani? No? Shall I tell you the story about Ayatollah al-Paygani? One day Ayatollah al-Paygani was giving Dars Kharij. Do you know what Dars Kharij is? If not, I can explain it to you. Dars Kharij basically is when you have studied to a level where the mujtahid trains you to become mujtahid. So he teaches you the tools of ijtihad. Sometimes it takes 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, depending on the teachers. Teaches you those tools that you can do ijtihad. Ayatollah al-Paygani was sitting there. And in the middle of his dars, he remembered something. He started to cry. So he looks up and he says, I used to have a friend. That friend was very studious. We were together in Najaf, we were together in Isfahan. He would study more than me. He was poorer than me. He worked very hard. Then they were separated for many years. This friend calls Ayatollah al-Paygani and says, come, I'm dying. So Ayatollah al-Paygani goes to see his friend. His friend says, oh, wasn't I more studious than you? He says, yes. He says, didn't I pray more than you did? He says, yes. Didn't I only had 1 meal a day when you had 2? He said, yes. He says, then why did you become a marja and I didn't? Get the Quran. Ayatollah al-Paygani went, got the Quran, gave it to me, opened his spat in the Quran, said Allah's done an injustice and died a kafir. Ayatollah al-Paygani got up, he says, I'm leaving Qum because they're going to ask me to lead his janazah and I know he died a kafir. He left for a couple of days and he came back. Why? What was the one thing that destroyed him? Jealousy. Jealousy. And jealousy is such that the evils of that can penetrate a person's soul as well. People become sick because of jealousy. Yep. And if a jealous person, the vibe as they say, the rays as they say, can hit you. I've seen people who you know they're sick because of jealous people. You know they become ill because of jealous people. Now the question is, how do you combat that, right? Because you're going to find people who are going to be jealous. This is why dhikr of Ali Muhammad. So the first thing is always, every week, recite Hadith Qissa in your home. Because that keeps the barakah. That keeps everything topped up. It's like your vitamins is topped up. 100% topped up, right? The second thing that if you recite every day that's a protection is Ziyarat Ali Yasin. If this ziyarah is recited, you find that there's protection there. In the morning before you leave, recite Surah Yasin and Ziyarat Ali Yasin. Between both of them is a protection. So these are a couple of the things that you can do, because bear in mind, I've seen myself, people sick, they're coming sick. Why? Because of an individual. I saw a person, the person's asr is very dirty. And this is why you must be careful. And this is why, even when it comes to Rasulullah, he's taught us certain du'as, he's taught us certain, you could say, surahs to recite. And there's a particular dua which is meant to be recited morning and evening, and if you were to write it and make it into a ta'weez, it would be a protection. So all of these things are there for one reason, to protect a human being, right? To protect a human being from shayateen, jinn and ins, man as well. Because the rays of man, when man is evil, is treacherous. Now look, I did promise the brother that we'd have a conversation on Ilm, Ramal and Jafar. So I'm going to stop that discussion here. In fact, I'll link it in and then we can go forward quickly. So on the basis of that, what happens? Adam comes into the world. The instant of Habil and Qabil takes place. One brother kills the other. That brother then marries a jinn, according to traditions. They have children. A cult or magic is taught one side. You have another brother that comes, Sheath, Hibatullah, Allah gives him. Allah says to Hibatullah, in fact, he says to Adam to tell Hibatullah, he's the successor, tell him to run, basically. Adam says, you get out of it, because when your brother finds out, he's going to come and kill you. He's older than you. The whole incident of Habil and Qabil was, I'm older. Why did he have Isma Adam, and why did he get Nabuwa? I should have got it. Why was it? Because Qabil's heart wasn't expansive. When Adam said, he said, look, Allah's given it to him. Why is Allah giving it to him? He says, I don't know why, because Allah's hikmat is Allah's hikmat. He says, so ask Allah to change his mind. So Allah says, I'm going to test you. I want the best produce that you have as a sacrifice. Qabil bought basically straw dirt. Habil bought a juicy ram. Fire came from heaven, smash, came down, and then they knew which sacrifice has been. Even in those days, look at it and see, Allah physically doesn't come down. How does he know that you accepted it? Lightning comes from the sky and hits the ram, gone. Right? So all of a sudden, one gets jealous of the other. Shaitan basically says something, he whispers in his ear and he says, listen, if you don't kill him, your children are going to insult you. They're going to be inferior because his children are going to be superior to your children, and they're going to turn around and say, we're superior to you. Immediately, jealous rage comes into place. He kills his brother. Right? So remember this. Human nature doesn't change. Jealousy destroys you. So bear this in mind. Second thing that happens then, so as we say, Sheath comes in, so you have two children. One who go to Yemen, one who go towards Iraq and those areas. So if you notice, some of the oldest DNA actually goes back to Iraq and that particular region. Although they say that the African E haplogroup apparently is meant to be one of the oldest, but wherever Adam came, they shifted from Africa and they shifted over. That to one side. After that, the Ark of Nuh comes into play. So follow me on this. 10 generations later, the Ark of Nuh comes. Prior to that, a prophet called Idris was there. Idris teaches, if you notice, Idris and then after that Ilyas, these prophets are the prophets that teach the occult sciences, as we know. So from the basis of Najum, which is astrology, then they could work out the systems of the sky. That tells you in and of itself there must be a God, because the whole world is designed in such a way that from the moment that you're born, it's predictable as to what you're going to do. This is why Amir al-Mu'mineen says, I came to know Allah through the breaking of my ties. When I plan something, Allah plans something else. Question is, how did Ali know? Well, Ali has ilm. And because Amir al-Mu'mineen has ilm, he also knows how to change destiny. So there's two things. Qadr and qada of Allah. Sometimes qadr of Allah can be changed. The story is in front of you. Isa alayhi salam is walking, he says, tomorrow that man will be dead. There was a snake under his bed. Man gave sadaqah. Allah deterred it. So remember, there are a couple of things that a human being can do to deter some fatality that's going to come. Qurbani, for example. Sadaqah. Being good to your parents. Going to the grave of your parents. Doing good deeds for your parents. Feeding an orphan. Giving water to people. So many good things. The problem is we don't do it. We fall short. Why? Because we don't take it seriously until we have a problem. And then the problem comes and then you start taking it seriously. And then it's a bit too late because the problem's already come. So now the problem has come, you've got to remove the problem, as opposed to mitigating it before the problem comes. It's easier to wipe it out before, and then when the problem itself comes, and then you're stuck. Right? So start from now. You know, today you've got this, you know, Al-Ain organization, they've got an app, for example. You can feed an orphan, you can give sadaqah, sadaqah jariyah. All of these things are there. Everything is on an app now. You don't physically need to go anywhere to give money. Use it, take it to your advantage and use it. Because God knows what can happen, how it can happen. Your $5, $7, $10 a month, $30 a month go a long way for a child who's hungry. This is practical wilaya now. Practical wilaya is what? When you practically put into place the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. And that's how you personify it. Helping an orphan. The app is there. Making a well. You know, $600 or something like that goes a long way to build water wells for people to drink. Imagine how many hundreds, if not thousands of people can drink just because of one action of yours. Every time they drink water, some issue of yours is eradicated. And everybody's thirsty. So let's be honest, people are always going to want water. Some of the best ways of converting people in the past was that you gave them water. How do you think Christian missionaries spread in Africa? They used to feed people. They used to clothe people. So automatically people became followers. These are things which are important. So anyhow, here, Ark of Nuh comes into place. Everyone else is wiped out now. Bar the children of Nuh. Nuh has a son by the name of Sam. And in essence, Sam is the one who basically, all of his progeny now is spread far and wide. In that you find that there are certain prophets that come of the Bani Israel who then teach this occult knowledge. And this is what my brother had mentioned. Let's talk about this then. Because he mentioned it, I don't mind talking about it. The first thing that they taught, if you go back to Idris's time, was Najum. They used to look at the stars and they would be able to tell things. Remember, when they looked at the stars and they said to Pharaoh, listen man, look at, a sign is coming, a child is going to be born. If you look at the signs of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. When he was to be born, then what happened? There were signs in the sky that told people that the Prophet is coming. In the same way, if you look at it, what else do you see? When Isa was coming into the world, again there's signs in the sky. So the people of the past, their methodology was looking at the stars. And this is why if you look at Najum, it's fascinating, honestly. We have 12 imams. Those imams are your guides. In Najum you have 12 houses. Guides you. Allah's hikmah doesn't change. In the outer reality or in the batin. You have 12 imams, one haqiqat. You have 12 months, one haqiqat. 12 months equals 1 year. That whole 1 year could be divided into 12, or you could just look at it as 1 year. You could either look at Ali, Muhammad, Hassan and Hussein as separate, or you could look at Rasulullah. All of which is haqiqat al-Muhammadi. This is why they say, Awwaluna Muhammad, Awsatuna Muhammad, Akhiruna Muhammad, Kulluna Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.
There's another salawat, please.
Allah. It's hard.
He's rising.
He's rising. Welcome to Houston. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.
Thank you. So in this way, 12. And each house is synonymous for something. Each house, so if you see Hindus ever, when a person's born, they have something which is known as the Janam Patri. Called a Zaicha, basically. That from the beginning, when they're born, the Pandit to an extent can predict. Now, bearing in mind, it's so complex that nobody actually gets that 100% right. Here the sixth Imam says, somebody once came to him and he said, can you teach me Najum? Mullah says, look, it's a bit complex. And then he talks about the consolation. And he says something, he says, only us Ahlul Bayt, or a particular family within India know this ilm. So he actually highlights that. So you've got Najum, and I won't go too much into it, but obviously the first house, in the Arabic they call it Tale. In Vedic astrology there's a difference. So obviously you have two shadow stars known as Rahu and Ketu within the Vedic astrology, which is not found maybe in other styles of astrology. But anyhow, that to one side, because I'm not going to focus on this, but if a person knows Najum, then they can also understand all of the other stars, all the other sciences as well. All the sciences are linked up, and that's what's fascinating. A person who knows Ilm al-Sa'a, has the knowledge of the hour, is sufficient enough. So for example, if it's a time of Mercury and you're going to speak, your speech or your education or work will always be manifest, will be better. And if ever you do an amal, you notice people who make da'wis, or they make hirs, they do it at the time of Mushtari, which is Jupiter. Because Jupiter is like the king of the stars. In the same way, let's say for example, if you want to speak to government, the Sa'at of Shams is very powerful. So in essence, the question you get, I can tell if somebody messages me to ask me a question, I can look at the time and tell you exactly what the question is going to be, just based on that. Because if it comes at a particular time, Venus, you know it's a marital issue. If it comes at the time of Jupiter, you know it's a spiritual issue. If it comes in the time of Saturn, and so forth. All of these things are there. Now, I don't claim to be an expert, but what I'm saying for you is Allah's creation is created in such a way that even the hour, the time you can tell, right? Then Nabi Allah Daniel comes. Suleiman teaches how to write amulets. So this is why, if you notice, even Bani Israel, or if you look at some of the Jewish rabbis, they're amazing when it comes to amulet writing. You know, if you can't have kids, they write you an amulet. They write you an amulet. Similarly, you find within our own traditions, you find some of our ulama, ayatullahs, they write you an amulet. They write you a ta'weez, for example, for protection. This came about in the time of Suleiman. Ilm al-Ramal started in the time of Idris, and later on was perfected in the time of Daniel. So what is Ilm al-Ramal? Ilm al-Ramal, unlike Ilm Najum, it has 16 houses. It's the most unique thing. 16 houses. For example, the first house again is known as Talib, as it's known in Najum. The first house tells you al-Dhamir, tells you what you're thinking, tells you your intention. The second house, when you go into it, it tells you your finances. For example, there's other uses of it as well, but it tells you your finances. The third house, for example, tells you about your siblings, about short journeys. The fourth, your parents, and particularly your mother. The fifth, your children. So if ever I want to know if somebody's having a boy or girl, Molana, am I having a boy or girl? Fifth house immediately. If the shikl is male, it's a male. If it's a female, it's a female. And khabar, news that's going to come in the fifth house. Sixth house, for example, in ilm Ramal, sixth house deals with health. And it can also deal with fame. And I say this because I use Ilm Najum on this. In Najum, in the sixth house also, it's possible to tell how famous you're going to be. So if there's a planet going in there which is depleted, you know exactly there's going to be a controversy that rises, for example. You could be the President of the United States. You could be the President of France. You could be anywhere, but however big you are, but it changes the system, you know, this issue is about to come up for him, or that issue is about to come up for her. The seventh house is in relation to relationships. And this is the same even within Najum. Because the seventh house within Najum is your family, marital relationships. How many wives you're going to have, or how many husbands are you going to have, or whether you're going to get divorced or not. Or whether a relationship is going to collapse or not. So for example, if somebody comes to me and they said, Molana, is my relationship going to last? Immediately you look at the first house and the seventh house, and you can see immediately from the shakl that comes if the relationship, how long it's going to survive or otherwise. How many children am I going to have? Now that's a bit more specialist. So what happens, for example, is the same house on the fifth house, the same shakl, if it's found in other houses, you can count and tell you how many children. If they're mudhakkar, you know it's male. If they're muannas, you know female. So you can tell the ratio between male and female as well. Coming to the eighth house. Eighth house, for example, is your spending, your foreign wealth. Where's the money going to come from? But also the eighth house is, and Najum is the house of death. You can predict a person's death with this house as well. So you can see how complex it is. So if a person doesn't know what they're doing, as opposed to predicting that you're going to make $1 million in France or Germany, they're going to say, man, you're going to die tomorrow. That guy automatically will have a heart failure. Right? Come to the ninth house. The ninth house is journey, but ninth house is also spirituality. So you can imagine journeying, spiritual journey, right? Ninth house. 10th house, business. Am I going to get the job or not? Immediately shakl comes in the 10th house. Yes, no, when, time period, everything is shown. 11th house, Bayt Ummid. 12th house, for example. Again, within Najum is slightly different, within Ramal is different. You can tell enemies from just that Bayt, the 12th house. Then the other houses are therefore witness houses. But you can also, so for example, in modern Ramal, they say the 14th house. If you want to know a person's famous or how it's going to be, or there's going to be a scandal, look at the 14th house and so forth. 15th house is Mizan, and then the Mizan on the Mizan is the 16th house. That in a nutshell is a very short explanation of what it is. But for example, if you were to ask me, who's going to win the election? So I predicted 3 elections. How could you predict 3 elections? For example, then you have combinations. You take one shakl and you subtract it within another shakl. Then I would tell you now, but it's getting a bit complex, so I won't go any further. So this in a nutshell is known as ilm ramal. And ramal in the olden days was done by sand. If you go to Africa, you'll see still, they do it with a stick on the ground. The dots and the lines and so forth, if you look at it. That's that. Now come to Ilm Jafar. Ilm Jafar was taught by Amir al-Mu'mineen. If it's boring, I can change the topic. Shall we continue? What's that about that? If it is, blame him. Ilm Jafar. Ilm Jafar, Amir al-Mu'mineen, they say, wrote on the back of a deer skin. Imam, 6th Imam, perfected it. We have Ilm Jafar, nobody else does. That's the one thing that differentiates our knowledge from everybody else's. And Jafar is qati. The answer of Jafar is that. Everything else has plus minus, can change. Jafar is Jafar. Right? Atala Marashi, I remember him, there's a clip whereby he turns around and he says, Jafar is a noble science, only taught to those who are pious. They said the ulama of Najaf had 3 things, khususiyat back in the day that they, obviously at this moment in time, they don't have. Nobody has. One of them, Ilm Jafar. One of them, Riyazat. One of them, Tayl Art. The ability to travel through space and time in a blink of an eye. To get from one end of the earth to the other. They said that these were the ulama of Najaf who had these 3 qualities in the olden days. Tayl Art, Riyadha, and Ilm Jafar. Now what's Ilm Jafar? Now there's different ways of doing it, but this particular way. Ilm Jafar is not Ilm al-Adad. People take the value of your name and so forth. No, there is a value to that, but it's not necessarily that. And Ilm al-Adad is different. The numerology is different. It's the same, but it's different. It's an offshoot. So for example, each number from 1 to 9, for example, reflects back to a star. So as I say, if you know Ilm Najum, then after that you can easily pick up Ilm al-Adad and you can easily apply certain things that other people would know. What number 9 represents, what 7. Why, for example, people, what their name and their combinations are. For example, number 4, if the name of a person goes to 4, the only number that ever commits suicide is 4, for example. Cancer, you always find a number 7 and number 4, etc., etc., etc. The most balanced number is 2 in many ways. And even that, it depends on the combination. So that, for example, now is numerology. Now, because nobody's ever going to teach you this, ever. I can't see anybody, especially in English, they don't know anything about these sciences. So I don't think anybody will. So I have about 4 or 5 minutes. Let me explain it to you. I've never explained to anyone from the member before, which I've explained in detail here. And I could go on for hours in doing it, but this will be the first and last time that I explain this. And you will never hear it again because there's no one who has that ability at this moment in time, unless if people train and they come forward, and they can't because all the ulama are now hidden. So our era was the last era of anyone like that. Come back to that ilm Jafar. I'll give you an example. Who killed Maytham al-Tammar, let's say? Right, or another one. Will I marry this girl? Right? Some of the youngsters want to. I'm not looking at anyone, by the way. Inshallah, you're happily married and happily engaged, and just anyway, you write the sentence. Then what happens? In one formulation, what you do is you look at the Sa'at. Which planet at the moment is? You take a harf from the planet. You take a harf, for example, from an Isma A'zam, is one way. For example, in Halal Maqasid. After that, what you do is you take the name of the person. You make a sentence structure with their name, with their time. You can even have the date of birth. You can make it as packed as you want, to make it as daqiq as you want. And then after that, what happens? After that, then is a system known as bust. You open it up. I remember Ayatollah Nasr Ilahi Burjurti, the great, the occultist. He's still alive, but you can't grab him. He's running around. He says, "I want to show you something," and you can imagine. I started to think, "Oh my God, what's he going to say?" He goes, "Let's put an ilm Jafar whether you're a sayyid or not." He's a sheikh. He goes, "Whether you're a sayyid or not." I thought, "Oh my God, let's see what happens." So he puts it in, right? Time, name, and then he bust. And I thought, "Oh my God, what's going to happen?" Because he's the one who used to be in Ayatollah Marashi Najafis, by the way. He says, "I'm the one who can tell who's not in this, who is." He's wiped out maybe 80% of the subcontinent Sadat, and he said they're all fake. So one by one, he's taking them all out. So I'm sweating now, and I'm thinking, what's he going to say, right? So now he's gone. So, and this is his words. So he opens it up, bust. So you open it all up, I thought, fine, let's see what he does. Obviously, I'm following the system. So, because I know what he's doing. So those huruf which were multiple, struck, all of them off. Eventually you come down to this wording. So there's enough huruf then left to create a sentence structure, right? So he turns around to me and says, this is what has come out. Man shakka faqad kafar. Anybody who doubts is a kafir. He says, that's your answer. And I thought, Alhamdulillah, thank God. So I guess something that walked off. So these kind of things happen, and then anyway, we've developed a very good relationship. So he goes, listen son. I said, listen son. Now let me teach you a couple more things on this. But anyway, his difficulty is currently in Mashhad, but he's moving around a lot. Everybody, they grab him, they find him, there's, the people around him. Oh, what's this issue, what's this issue, what's this issue? He doesn't like to show up in places. He comes, I think, once to Qom, and then you can see a whole group of people come towards it. But anyway, and you can edit that, yeah. But so he comes out with that. Now, the reason why I said this is for that reason. Even your nasl can be told. Which imam you're from can come from that. For example, you can even figure out in your Zaid where there's a break. So this, for example, ilm Jafar, any question, any answer can come from it. And you can see how daqiq it is because Amir al-Mu'mineen taught it. So anyway, this brings an end to that. We can go on, but I'm looking at the time. I have 5 minutes to conclude. So based on that, inshallah, if Allah gives us life, we can carry this discussion on. And inshallah, in fact, the next person who's coming, he also likes a bit of Ibn Sina, because I know the young man from when he was younger, and I saw your flyer, so I know who's coming. Take good care of him, and he'll also speak about Ibn Sina if you push him to speak about it. And he's very good at hajjam as well, which is one of the traditions of the Prophet. But anyway, without advertising for him, inshallah, you continue your journey. Look, ultimately, all of this to one side. The purpose of Majlis has always been, traditionally, it was only until India, until Ghufran Ma'ab, that you have these type of majalis. Before that, majalis would always be poetry or just masaib. But as you know, a marja, naib imam, naib arm of the imam, can change a culture when the need arises. And the need at the time was, well, we have a mimbar, we might as well teach the fadail of Ahlul Bayt before we go into the masaib of Ahlul Bayt. But the key thing of a majlis that Sayyidah Zainab installed is this: the need to cry over Ahlul Bayt. That's what's important. You know, there's a story that comes to mind. Maybe I've told this before, in 2013. And then after that, 2018. But I'll tell you this story because it always touches my heart. There was a Hindu couple who couldn't have children. And in 2007, in the city of Lucknow, this Hindu couple came to the procession, to the julus. And the person was a Rajput. And he said to himself that when you come to the Majlis of Hussein, if you go into the alam of Abbas, dua is accepted. He said to his wife, my mother said to me, if there's ever a problem, go to the alam of Abbas. Aqeed of this Rajput. Him and his wife both go into the alam. Now remember, Abbas's alam doesn't turn anybody away. So they go, they hold on, and he makes a wish, he makes a mannat. He says, if you, Abbas, give me a boy. He gets very emotional. Some people get emotional. He says, Abbas, if you give me a boy, I'll bury him in your way. No, he made it. He didn't know what he was saying. He was emotional. What happened? 9 months later, Allah gives him a boy. This is like 20 years ago. It's not like 100 years ago. He lived outside of Lucknow. And he remembered, I made a promise to Abbas. He said, I'm a man. A man is recognized by the promises he keeps. So he says that when the mother wasn't watching, when his wife wasn't, he took the baby. And he said, I have to fulfill my promise. And heavy-hearted he went out. And of course he'd heard the story about Yasser. So he was heavy-hearted. So he went out, with his hands, he started to dig. And the baby's smiling, and the baby's cooing, and the baby's holding his finger, and it's becoming very difficult for him to do this. Eventually he opens up the ground, he puts the baby in, and he quickly chucks the dirt on the baby. Heavy-hearted he walks back to his home. When he walks into his home, he heard a baby crying. When he heard the baby crying, he said to his wife, he got angry. He said, did you follow me? She said, no, I didn't follow you. He said, what happened then? How have you got this baby? She said, half an hour after you went, a very tall man came, he knocked on the door, he gave me a child, and he said, tell your husband, what we give, we don't take back. Says, what we give, we don't take back. At least for once, come under the flag of Abbas and see what happens. Which Abbas? Look, if I can narrate this. One day, Baneen is pacing in her house. Baneen is pacing in her house. Fajr time comes. Dhuhr time comes. Asr time comes. Abbas hasn't come back. Baneen is worried because every mother is worried. Regardless of, even if you're the mother of Abbas, imagine. Even the mother of Abbas worries. You can see, you know when they came back, there was a nida, قَدْ قُتِلَ الْحُسَيْنُ بِكَرْبَلَا. Baneen got up, she said, which Hussein is it? They said, Hussein the son of Zahra. She gets up, she says, forgive me, Zahra. Forgive me. In the first place she looks towards Najaf, she said, my Sayyid, my Mawla, forgive me, my son wasn't of any use to your son. Right, you can imagine this mother. She comes forward, she says, tell me. She says, which Hussein do you talk about? She says, Zahra's son. He says, how is it possible? Abbas was there. They replied, they said, Abbas was there, but Abbas was killed. Said, I can't believe Abbas was killed. How was he killed? They said they attacked him from the back. Says Abbas is a warrior, he can't be attacked from the back. Says no, Ummul Baneen, Abbas's arms were cut off, then he was attacked from the back. Baneen falls to the ground. She asks a question. She says, oh person, when my son fell, he didn't have any arms. How did he stop his... At that moment she says, Fadl, give me a stick. Let's go to a broken grave. When she gets there, she says, Bibi, my son wasn't treacherous to your son. He gave his life first. He didn't betray your son. You can imagine it. She would sit there, she would make 4 graves. She would say, my lines, who am I going to cry over first? And then she would say, but I'm going to cry over Hussein because your mother is alive to cry over you. You could imagine that's Abbas. So they say Ummul Baneen is worried. She's thinking, where's Abbas? Amir al-Mu'mineen's she can't take it. Amir al-Mu'mineen gets up, he says, I know where Abbas is. Let me go and find him. As he walks, he knows where he's going. You can imagine, I can only imagine Amir al-Mu'mineen had tears in his eyes. Why? Because he was going to a broken grave. As he got to that part of Medina where there's a broken grave, his son was standing there. There were tears falling like pearls from the eyes of Abbas. When Amir al-Mu'mineen touched his shoulder, Abbas looks behind. He sees Amir al-Mu'mineen. He puts his head down. He says, Father, how comes you came? He says, son, your mother's been worried about you. She's been very worried. Son, where have you been? The reply comes. He replied, Father, what could I do? At Fajr time when I was leaving Masjid al-Nabawi, a voice from a grave came, Waladi, my son, come to me. Said that when I went there, the voice started to say to me, Abbas, if only you were there, my rib wouldn't have been broken. Abbas, if only you were there, they wouldn't have killed my Muhsin. Abbas, if you were only there, Zainab wouldn't have become yatima. Abbas, if you were only there, they wouldn't have dragged Amir al-Mu'mineen, your father, by the neck. Abbas, if you were only there, Imam Hassan wouldn't have been chucked onto the ground. Abbas. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un.